It has been a hectic past week and a half for me. I did an engine replacement early last week, built 3 engines last week, got the FD wrapped up to go get tuned. It gets tuned on Friday. I have another engine replacement. Actually, it's not an engine replacement. I'm doing a rotating kit for someone this weekend. I have another engine to build. Probably this week, I'm assuming, is when it's gonna get dropped off, the case have. So we're staying busy over here. That's not a bad thing. That's what helps funds these builds quite a bit. So while we were doing all that, I got a good amount of goodies that can go back on the STI. Can I call it an STI? I'm just gonna call it an STI. That we can put on the 22B, the STI, the P25, the 2.5 RS, call it whatever you want. The biggest thing being the proper top hats for the car. So if you guys remember, we got a set of Fortunato 500s for an 05 to 07 STI. We snagged those from our guys over at Rally Sport. But the problem with the 05 to 07 top hats, and I'll show you this when we go to swap these, is the top hats themselves are different from RS to GD. They look like they're the same. They almost fit proper, but they just don't. Once we get the coilovers in, we can actually get the front hubs on, the front axles in, the front rotors on, not the front rotors, the calipers, hook up the brake line. We can get the drive shaft in. I do have the proper studs and pinion flange this time for the R180, so we can get all of that put in permanently. So a lot of what we're doing is hopefully gonna be wrapping up the drivetrain and getting as far as we can on the suspension. We're gonna be starting with the front coilovers. These are relatively gonna be easiest. We just take out these 4 Allen head screws, take this plate off, swap our new 2.5 RS plate on, and then we can install the fronts permanently. Now the issue that we had with the 05 to 07 are these camber plates did not line up properly with the chassis. These ones will. So after I get one of these swapped over, I'll compare the RS one to the STI one, so that way you guys can actually see the difference. But you know, it's just like it's the small stuff. I didn't know. I don't think a lot of other people know. Well, people who've done the swaps before, I can't say that not everybody knows, because people who have done the swaps, I'm sure that they're aware of this, but for my first time, I thought that GD coilovers, which is bolt right up, but the front top hats, these are the easy ones to swap out. For the rears, it's a little bit more difficult. I did opt for the upgraded radial bearing in the rear, as well as camber plates, to be able to adjust the suspension a little bit more, be able to dial it in a little bit more, and kind of get it exactly where we want it. No, was it worth the extra 120 bucks? I think so, just to have the adjustability. Proper top hats with 5x114 lowers. I guess you could have also bought RS coilovers and then bought STI lowers and swapped them that way also. Look at the top hat. These are the STI top hats. You'll notice that it's offset towards the engine bay a little bit. This top hat should be perfectly linear with the strut tower here. Some people will argue, but you can adjust your caster like this, it'll be totally fine. This is not how I want to adjust my caster. This is how I want to adjust my camber. I want to be able to adjust my caster from down there. Here, we have the RS one where you guys can see it's perfectly linear with the strut tower here. This is how it should be. When you see people install coilovers and this longitudinal slot is at an angle like this or like this, that means that either the left one's on the right side and the right one's on the left side, or they're just the wrong top hats for the car. They should always be linear with the strut tower. RS one on this side. The other option here, if you didn't want to go to the extent of doing this, what you could do is re-drill these top hat holes and make them work. But for the money, I feel like it's a better option to just buy the proper top hats and send it that way versus cutting up the car. As somebody who cuts up a lot of their cars, if I can avoid cutting the car, I'm gonna avoid cutting the car. I have not done this before, so this will be a first for me. Okay, so we're gonna take this off, loosen it, then we can pull that guy out. Okay, so that comes off, that comes off, then that comes out. So I'm not using any of this, I believe. I set this guy on here, like that, and then we put spacer, then we do this guy, and then we do this guy? Yeah, good waiting music. And on it, what should I torque that down to?
Just use electric impact guns here at the shop.
There we go. look at the size difference in top hat here. This is our new RS one. So this one is actually made for a 2.5 RS. This one is the STI one. The STI one is actually significantly bigger and the spacing on the studs is way wider. The rest of them are all significantly off. As you guys, I'm trying to show you guys, it's kind of hard, but. That guy, and then we got this guy. Slide this guy in his home. So now that we have our top hat swapped out and our coilovers installed, that means we can actually start putting on a lot more of the suspension, connecting it all together. So I did get in my other Moog wheel bearing. This is actually for a 15 to 21 STI, but funny enough, it goes right into an 05 to 07 knuckle. I think these are actually 04 to 07 knuckles. So we can get the knuckles in. I want to get the front axles in. For the front axles, we do have brand new axle nuts, and we also have brand new circlips that retain the axle in the transmission. I don't even know what's left in the front. I need a ball joint kit and a new steering rack, but aside from that, that should almost be the front suspension done. Look at that. Why is that going in so easy? Dude, this is a rear axle. Oh, I've made a mistake. I fucked up when I put these together, and this has become a problem that I don't want to deal with this. So I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm gonna push this off till later. You see, the problem here is this axle is supposed to be for the front, but I'm pretty sure it's for the rear. Now, that wouldn't be so much an issue because, well, if I was rebuilding the axles, that wouldn't be so much of an issue, but I've already rebuilt the axles. And everything would need to be re-cleaned and redone again. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna buy some DSS axles and put them in the car. Then I'll never have to worry about breaking an axle, because you see, the issue here is that cup right there fits in the transmission. The cup that was on here does not, because the cup that was on here is for the rear. I'm pretty annoyed with this situation. I believe this is correct. It might not be. If I messed one up, I probably messed them all up. And if this one isn't the right, this is right for the rear. So this rear should be correct. I'm not dealing with this. I'm gonna get new axles ordered for the car, and I will use these refurbished ones as parts axles for another car I'm doing, and I'll just build some better axles for him. But the issue I ran into, these two on the end here, these are rear axles, and you guys can see the difference. One of them has a wrong axle shaft. The dirty one is the proper one. These ones are supposed to be front axles, but if you come back here, the cups are different on them. That cup goes on the rear, that one goes on the front. So this is totally my mess up, and I don't want to deal with it right now. So I hate to interrupt, but we do have to take a minute to talk about today's video partner, because this is actually one that's pretty cool. I have never had one of these tools before, and the guys over at Autel reached out to us and said, hey, would you be interested in testing out one of our essentially scan tools and tablets and whatnot? These things are legit. This is the AutoFix D1 Lite powered by Autel. Now, you guys have known we've been using access ports, computers, all this stuff to scan cars and do whatever we could do in the past. We've never had a dedicated scan tool. And this is actually, I should have actually got one of these a long time ago, because I just got done playing with this thing and it's actually legit. I would test it on the cars, but no OBD2 port, no OBD2 port. The truck does have an OBD2 port, so I can show you on that. Just like any scan tool, it's easy enough. Plug in the OBD2 port, turn on the device, It's actually cool. This, honestly, dude, like, if you guys have watched the channel for a long time, you know I don't normally do stuff like this with like products like these, but this is actually sick. Actually, so it will auto detect, but this is actually kind of cool. It has a camera built into it also, so you can just scan the VIN. It's gonna have us verify the VIN, and it's got like this nice hard protective case, because knowing me, I'm pretty rough with stuff. We can go to diagnostics. We'll just auto scan the truck. You can also do things like read the VIN, see the mileage reports. You can do a surprising amount of stuff. This will also, when it was updating, I did see that this does have programming features for some cars. I think the one that I was looking at the time was a Mercedes stuff. We have 8 tire pressure monitoring fault. Transmitter, a whole bunch of transmitter ones. I'm gonna erase all these codes. They're gonna come back. Ignition on, engine off, yes. So my TPMS light actually just turned off. But you can pull up like a vehicle profile. It'll tell you all the information about the vehicle. For this, it's obviously a Toyota Tacoma, North America. It is a 2017 with a 2GR F in it, and it'll beep at you to remember to take out the dongle, which is kind of nice, because that is something I would probably forget in a car. So a huge shout out to the guys over at Autel and AutoFix. I'll link this down below. I just looked at the link, and there's actually an upcoming sale tonight on this. These are $3.99 before any sale, so I'm curious what they're gonna go down to. Now let's get back into the Subaru. Like I said, I just want to throw this out, they didn't pay me to promote this. I just thought it was like a genuinely cool product. They just said, hey, we'll send it over to you if you want to, you know, toss it in a video or something. I was like, yeah, dude, we'll get some use out of this thing. Why would that go there? I feel like that would go on the other side. Am I crazy? Is this one not for this side? Is this lower collar for the other side? I'm pretty sure, because wheel speed sensor goes there, I have the lower collars swapped. Damn it. You know, one day I'll have my shit together. The day is not today, but one day it will be. Sometimes I wonder if I should, you know, give up cars and take up painting, you know, Bob Ross style painting, some happy clouds. Who doesn't want that? I don't know. That's exactly what I didn't want to do. That could have been an easy problem for later. Now that is accurate. Look at us, man. We don't have any alterant. Now for the fun part of trying to get this diff out by myself. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna go carbon and do one-piece drive shaft. I think that's gonna be the way that I end up going with this. There we go. Oh, hey, mate. That was fucking heavy. So I wanted to jump to the rear diff, and we had to get these old rusty nuts off the studs. You see, when I got the studs, the nuts were kind of seized on there with a whole bunch of rust. So with a little bit of heat and a little bit of persuasion, we were able to get them off. Now the whole reason that I'm using R160 studs in an R180 is because the R180 studs are too short to fully pass through a 2.5 RS rear subframe. So we need the R160 studs that are a bit longer to properly mount this differential up. And while I have the diff out, I figured it would be a good idea to swap the diff seals at this time. With the diff on the table, it's obviously going to be much easier than doing it in car. We have the rear diff permanently in. So the longer studs did solve the issue of not being able to bolt the diff in. Diff lines up perfect. I did leave the R180 pinion hub on it, so that way the carbon drive shaft, I'm just gonna do a carbon drive shaft. The carbon drive shaft will fit in here, no problem. For now, what we can do, since we have front lower control arms in, is get our end links on. So the way that these are gonna go is they're gonna kind of wrap up and around over the tie rod as it would come out, and then we've got these little end links that'll drop down from those and connect up to our lower control arms, and that is going to complete the front sway bar at least. So we'll get a little bit farther on some of the suspension for what we can. So this is essentially going to point pretty much just like that. Set screw in, and this is what is going to keep this piece taut on the sway bar. It's really interesting having an internal sway bar. I've never used a sway bar like this, so I actually am very curious to see how this handles. You see the sway bar turning right there. So this will go in that. There we go. This sway bar setup is sweet. So watch when I push up on the control arm. Obviously the end links aren't tight right now, but it moves. Dude, that's so cool. It uses these big extruded aluminum cut, it's not extruded, but these CNC'd aluminum pieces. Has a set screw here. The inside is splined so it can't spin. And then it comes with these spherical bushing end links that you have to assemble. And like I said, they give you different options for the insides of these. I may have to put a couple spacers in there to get this sit exactly where it needs to, but that shouldn't be an issue. So glad to see that this is sorted. Now I just need to get a power steering rack that actually fits in here. Next up on the agenda is e-brake cable. Now I only bought one e-brake cable because I don't know if this will fit yet. This is a 2004 R-STI e-brake cable. I've seen so many conflicting things when it comes to e-brake cables and doing these swaps. So you can't necessarily use the RS e-brake cables from what I've read because they're too short. The cable comes out in a different position on the STI knuckle than it would on the RS. So what we need to do is test fit that up. If that fits, we can at least get one e-brake installed. I have all new e-brake shoes, all new e-brake clips, hardware, all that stuff, and we can actually get the e-brake put on here. So this should be an interesting time. I'm not a big fan of doing e-brake stuff, but sometimes it is a necessary evil. And right here, somewhere else. There's no way that it bolts right. Oh my God, brother, that's so long. What? This seems like too much cable, doesn't it? Like this can come in more, but as I put the rest of the e-brake stuff there, I feel like that's gonna push out towards the spindle. So I don't think 04 STI cables will actually work. Any other RS STI swapped people out there, what are you guys using for rear e-brake cables? Because this, I don't foresee working. I mean, it might work. I might be crazy and I might just be like overthinking this, but that doesn't seem right. I could be just like overthinking this, but that seems like way too much e-brake cable. Since I can't do anything else on the car for suspension or e-brake or any of that stuff right now, we're gonna jump to something we can do, which is battery cable wiring. So this is all 4-gauge ECWS or EWCS welding wire. This is what I used on the RX-7 also in 4-gauge. This will be totally fine. This is not CCA wire. This is full copper, so this is a little bit better of a conductor than some of the cheap speaker wire you'd see as like CCA stuff. So this is what I use for all my battery relocation. So when doing this, there's a couple things that we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to put a power stud in the front of the engine bay somewhere. That should be relatively easy. For our ground, we are going to have to ground the battery to the engine as well as to the chassis. So the way I'm gonna do that, coming off of the negative post here, I'm gonna have the battery cable come down and ground out to this post here. And then from that post, we're gonna have a secondary ground wire that's gonna run up into the engine bay. I figured now, while we have the interior and everything still out, this is gonna be the best time to run wiring. We'll probably run our fuel pump wiring back here also. I did order the fuse box and all that stuff, so that way we can get the fuel pumps and everything like that wired up. For the positive, we're gonna have a cable that comes off the terminal, comes down off of our Melee battery mount here with our Group 35 battery from Full Throttle, have a circuit breaker on the side here. That will connect up to the circuit breaker. So in the event of a big power surge, or if the car draws more than 200 amps, it's gonna pop the breaker for safety. And then from there, we'll have another wire that comes off of the circuit breaker going up into the engine bay to our power stud. Beautiful. Got our ground cable coming off the battery, grounding to the chassis that will also run up to the engine bay. We've got our power side coming down to our circuit breaker here. So now anything we need to power off the car will tie into the 200 amp circuit breaker. If the circuit breaker sees more than 200 amps, it'll pop it and it won't let power flow to the rest of the car. So it's just a good safety to have built in. Like I said, the ECU and everything will probably tie to that. With the battery connection done for the circuit breaker and for the battery itself, we can actually go ahead and crimp on our Sherlock connectors onto some wire for the ECU. So that does need direct power, but since our ground goes from the battery to the chassis, we can actually just tie those together and use that as a bridge point to have the ground wire go from the ECU to that bridge point. Because it goes directly to the battery, it's essentially making the connection to go directly to the battery. So we don't need to run a secondary ground wire all the way to the back of the car. So I just looked on Haltech's website. It said that we can use our crimping tool that we've been using to crimp these Sherlocks. I'm a little sketch. It does say to use 4 gauge like this. So that's what we're gonna do. And hopefully I don't mess this up, because these are like 70 bucks each. Power cable going to a jumper. We've got one power cable coming off, going up to the ECU. We've got our ground going to our ground spot right up here, and that ground's right on the back seat, and then we can tie that in with another wire that'll come down, wrap across, go up, and then into the engine bay and ground out to the chassis. We've got our power cable coming off of our R3 here, coming down, wrapping behind the heater core, underneath the wiring, through the frame, going back to the back of the car. The ground wire for the ECU, this wire is legit like maybe an inch too short. And instead of just like stretching it to make it work or putting it in a weird routing, I'll just buy some more wire, and I'm pretty sure I can buy these connectors on Amazon. I just need one of them. Once the rest of the wire comes in, we can actually run one more power cable that'll come up, run along the back seat up into the engine bay for actual positive power for the alternator, the starter, and all that stuff to tie into, so that way the alternator can charge the battery. So I don't know where I'm gonna put that quite yet. I would like to kind of tuck it out of the way. The dry sump reservoir is, I wanna try to put it up here so that way I don't have to have a tank full of oil inside of the car, but well, it would be actually kind of, no, because I have intercooler piping that's gonna have to go through there. Intercooler piping is gonna have to go through there too, crap. I don't know, we'll figure it out later. Maybe I'll just put it back there and kind of just tuck it out of the way. That is all I've got on the Subaru for this video, you guys. I know it seems like I'm jumping around quite a bit on this thing, and it's because I am. I'm working with the stuff that I have here and the stuff that I'm waiting for to come in. So what we're probably going to start doing next is more body work and more painting on this thing. That's gonna be not necessarily the wide body, that's gonna be the doors, the trunk, and the hood. I think that's gonna be all the next stuff that we start on. The way that I'm looking at building this car is, even though I'm jumping around, all of the stuff that we're doing, it needs to be done regardless. It doesn't matter if I do it now, it doesn't matter if I do it later. At the end of the day, it all needs to be done. So if I can knock out everything that I can knock out in the interim, that's gonna be a win. I did just place the order for the radiant fuel hanger, the fuse box, and all the wiring, so that way I'm gonna do one video on setting up like a good electrical system for installing a dual radiant pump like this. I did like kind of a test one on the RX-7. I'm gonna do it the same way. I'm gonna build my own fuse box for it, but still good progress. The suspension is almost there. The drivetrain, we did have an oopsie on the axles, but that's all right. It just gives us an opportunity to run a stronger axle. So we'll get some DSS axles ordered here in the next week or so. Get those installed. I still need to figure out what wheels that I want to put on this car. If you guys have any ideas or options, I'm thinking like a thicker 5-spoke wheel. I kind of regret getting rid of the Rega Masters because I think they would have looked baller on this thing, but at the end of the day, we'll pick something. But with that, that's all I got for you guys on this one. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Go and hit that like button, turn it black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, sight, and whatever color it turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be up at one of these corners, no idea which one quite yet, but with that, I will catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies.